This brings us to look at the ethics of postmodernism or postmodernism ethics. The other one was living with no God. This one deals with living with no truth. Our objectives here are that we need to define postmodernity or postmodernism. Secondly, explain how modernity can be challenged by postmoderns. Thirdly, discuss the implication of modern thinking on understanding humanity, nature, and morality. We need to reflect upon its ethical implications, then articulate a Christian response to the postmodern project. We want to look at the failure of modernism before postmodernity came. What was the problem with modernism? Then we deal with the question of truth in postmodernity. A man called Friedrich Nietzsche asks a question: is God dead? Is God dead? And we deal with existential ethics, which is a case study of postmodernism ethics. And we look at extreme moral relativism. And then we'll be looking at Christian reaction to postmodernism. And then we'll conclude our chapter here. Post means after. Post, after. Then modern, new. So we are looking at after the new. We have already looked at modernity or modernism, which is new or current or recent. So postmodernism is defined by Terry Eagleton as the contemporary movement of thought which rejects the possibility of objective knowledge and is therefore skeptical of truth, unity, and progress. In other words, modernism. Superiority of modern ideas and science was doubted. The idea of progress was let down. So moral foundations of modernity were left exposed after the Second World Wars. How could morally superior and more revolved European nations fight like savages? And we know most of the European nations are the ones who engaged in the Second World War in a bid, to scramble for many nations of Africa. And in so doing, they used heavy guns, artilleries, sophisticated bombs, fighting one another. And this man, he says, the Europeans who were regarded as a people who were now more exposed to modern ideas, who had engaged in discoveries and crossing seas and oceans, exploiting the air and many other things, is wondering how could they fight like savages? How? That's where the question was, is God dead? So the foundations of society in modernity brought about emptiness, because if people were modern and thinking like modern people, they were moving away from savage way of life, then they should not have behaved like they did in Second World War. And here we talk about individualism was changed and challenged, and materialism left people empty. Because you see, nations fought, seeking to gain material from the conquered lands. They wanted it all for themselves, trying to chase away people who competed. And in so doing, postmodern was challenging what happened during the modern days, that the chase for individualism and materialism was an empty chase. So postmodernism challenged the capacity of human reason to discover and competently articulate universal truth. Here you find, as we refer to the Second World War, how could human reason help people to avoid exterminating many nations and their inhabitants? So he says here that human reason has failed to discover competently in articulating on universal truth. It challenges pretensions of humans to know truth which is applicable to every situation, community, age, etc., time and space. Sometimes when we don't understand the truth and we don't apply it, that's where we fail to understand the importance of humanity. No universal source of truth, so anything can be true. When you kill, it is true. When you hate, see, it is true. When you disregard others, you find that is the source of truth. That is how best you can live. So reality is replaced with hyper reality, crisis of self-identity. Who is man? Who is man? And that's where we find an issue: man or male, woman or female, or hermaphrodites. And this brings the problem of homosexuality, because there is a crisis of self-identity. You know, today some people think to themselves that they are neither women or men. We have read stories of some people, they wake up and say, I think I should be a female. They go for operation, then they become either male or female. After maybe some time, the experience becomes worse. They want to reverse. That's why you say male or female, or woman or male, you know, something like that. So there is search for meaning from multiple sources. Later on, some people will be seeking to be like animals and want to live either in water or in the forest. People are searching for the truth or the meaning. There is an increase or an increased anxiety, but also accompanied by fear. In this case, rationalization comes in, which gives opinions which are what matter in postmodern thinking. Opinions that matter. In this case, we look at collective ownership, disapproval of the idea of individual ownership. It would be most fair if we divided and distributed goods as a group which encourages socialism and communism, which would deny individual rights on possession. This causes belief in internationalization or internationalism versus nationalism, later on creating the greater good, uniting instead of dividing. We have, for example, United Nations, Commonwealth, the Western Bloc, and all those. So Nietzsche declared God is dead. We have killed him. Because of killing him, we are driving our own sentiments. Modern society has found a way of living as if God was unnecessary. That's why in nations today, you have been hearing, for example, about the war between Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Palestine. The people look at it in their own perspective. They are not looking at it from God's perspective. No respect of others' boundaries, no respect of human life, no respect of God's creation. So we see it. It is in our hand to squeeze it and we destroy it or let it go. So the will to power should be the single impulse that guides morality. That is according to Nietzsche. The will to power. He rejects slave morality, which is herd morality. You know, when you have a herd of animals, you are the one who is pushing them according to your own will where they should go. A slave is known to be a person who has no personal rights to claim and live. But he rejects this kind of slave morality where we are looking at communism, socialism, and he accepts Superman morality where you have it to yourself according to your own will and ability. Therefore, it brings us to look at the age of Superman. And here we find that power is the goal of life. That's why in politics, people are fighting for positions of power. When it comes to economy, you find superpowers are trying to control markets. Even individuals here, they are competing. Who has the power to control the industry of production or the power to control prices? So it becomes the age of Superman. We are not looking at any other person in control. This brings us to look at existentialism. This comes from Latin word existere, to stand out. We exist first and determine our essence by means of choice. You look at yourself, then you choose what you want to do. Life is meaningless because we are not the ones who choose it or who choose to be. We make our own meaning. In other words, when you look at what we study from the Old Testament, God made us in his own image and likeness and determined how we should live. He determined our goals. But today, in the post-modernity, derived from modernity, we have tried to make meaning for ourselves. What we want to be, we choose, and we disregard what God has intended for us. Man is condemned to be free. We are condemned to establish our own values. That is condemnation is not something good. Because you see, after the fall of man, we are condemned. Choices were left to ourselves. You choose to die or you choose to live. Today, when you wake up from your home, you choose which direction you want to take. Because God has left it into our hands. You know, in creation, he gave us a free will. And when you misguide this free will, it will end up, making you lose your goal. You lose your own goal. I mean, goal that was set for you and you set your own. So, the conditions in which we exist and our choices influence our moral character. If you choose to be a thief and you want to exist in that perspective, your moral character will be different. You choose to be a murderer, you choose to be an alcoholic, you know, that is the condition you want to exist. There are those you have heard called serial killers. They have decided to exist like that. There are those who are known as prostitutes on the streets. They have spent their life on streets. Some people say they want to make ends meet because they are not able to work like others. But they say since we can have our bodies, we can use them in order to live. That is the way how they have chosen to exist. And that is a choice. And that choice will influence their moral character. Similarly, with us in our professions, be it a social worker, be it a lawyer, be it a medic, how you want to exist will determine the choices you make and influence your character. Some people will resist you, some people will like you. Some people in the community will point a finger against you, some people will chase you away, others will invite you because of your character. This brings us to relativism, which is an ethical theory holding the conceptions of truth and moral values, which are not absolute but are relative to the persons or groups holding them. I will give an example of a thief. A thief knows the law. But when a thief or a greedy person feels that there is something he needs or she needs, the law applied will be relative. He can kill because he wants something. And he can save the life because the person who is before him or her does not have what he wants. So the application of the law is related to the situation of the thief. Once the thief has what he wants, the law will apply. When he does not have what he wants, the law will not apply. That is the ethical theory. How people think about the application of the truth. Problems with self-identity pose problems for moral responsibility. If you don't identify yourself as human, as educated, as enlightened, or otherwise, it may cause a problem of your moral responsibility. Human beings are supposed to respond positively to the environment around them and to themselves. But in most cases, you find we lack self-identity, like we talk about the gay people. They have failed to identify themselves with the purpose of their being who they are. And as a result, they have posed problems of their moral responsibility, because when they look at fellow men or fellow women, they look at them as their sexual partners. They are traditional sources of moral authority, like rules, principles, and commandments, which we have. But all these have collapsed because there is dissatisfaction that has destroyed sources of order and meaning. When you are not satisfied with who you are or what you have, it will lead you to do something in order to have it. Like people say, by crook or hook, you will apply it as long as you will be able to get it. And it will destroy the order and meaning of the way of life because you are not satisfied with what you have or what you are. In postmodernism, we find challenges to Christianity. Although we have posed it here as a question. So we ask ourselves, is postmodernism a challenge to Christianity? Does this situation provide the best opportunity for evangelization? Can we use assets provided and the means provided by postmodernism in order to evangelize? Can we? Here we deal with the following. It exposes human fitness, human finiteness. For us human beings, we are not infinite like God. We have a limitation. Our life begins and ends somewhere. We are finite. Also, it deals with modernity, which proves that the temptation of knowing good and evil and being gods leads to failure. We probe ourselves into knowing how far good is this one. Sometimes we fail to differentiate between good and evil. We don't have, a line dividing between the two. And as a result, we want to make ourselves gods to determine for ourselves. You say this is good, I will do it even when it is evil. In the Bible, there is something dealing with that. People take good for evil and evil for good. They don't define. And as a result, we determine what we want to do. And even we take power in our own hands to deal with creation, environment, and human life. And as a result, it ends a failure. If you bring it to people who are looking for wealth, I've never seen anybody declaring that he's wealthy so he cannot work anymore. He's declared by others, but he himself cannot declare. Sometimes they take more time to think about wealth than thinking about the Creator. And it is Solomon who talked about vanity of vanity is vanity. Chasing life is vanity. It ends to nothing. So, when the pride of man in his own ability fails, then we are told that man should turn back to God, because God has it all. Since we said that man is finite, there is his limitation, but God is not limited. So when everything goes, then you know that there is one who can bring you back on the road. You turn back to God. And that is one way of Christian advice. It becomes an opportunity where failure is, because you see, evangelization It is very hard to evangelize somebody who has been working, looking for money and getting the money. And you evangelize this person to turn to God, he will ask you, for what? If I have it all. But when things go, it is only when they will realize that there is another power they can turn to. However, there is also a revival of other religions apart from Christianity that can help men to turn back to God. So, postmodernism provides one of the biggest opportunities for re-establishing Christian truth, that there is truth in the God we believe, because after everything fails, you will come back. However, it requires going back to the authority of the scriptures without adding our own ideas. Because when our own ideas fail, then you know that there is where things cannot fail. So, that is very important for us to know and acknowledge that postmodernism also has not provided us a means of achieving without the truth concerning God and our responsibility.